Hey, good morning, everybody. Hey, who wants to hear a joke? Okay, you ready? All right, you talked me into it. Okay, so there's three guys walk into a bar, not knowing each other, not knowing anybody there, and within 10 minutes, they become lifelong friends who help each other out and are always there for each other. Okay, it's not a very good joke, and the reason is because it never happens that way, okay? Friendships are not accidents. We may come back with better jokes, but that was not a very good one. Friendships usually, they may start accidentally, but the kind of friends and the kind of community that you really need in life usually is not something that you look back on and it's like, well, nobody put any effort into this at all. We just happen to run into each other. Usually it takes a lot of work and a lot of intentionality to build the community that you need. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. If you were here last week we talked about the fact that when you have friends that are going through tough times, we ought to want to help them. In fact, we said, wouldn't it be great if Christians were known for this instead of maybe a lot of other things? Wouldn't it be amazing if Christians were known for being the people that helped hurting people? But helping hurting people is complicated. Many of you have been burnt before when you tried to help hurting people, so that's why you don't try to help hurting people anymore, because it went bad one time. And so last week we talked about some wisdom on how to do that, because a lot of times when people are hurting, and this is a series about mental health, when people are really hurting mentally and emotionally, although we need people in our lives and we need to sit around and we need to drink coffee with a friend or go to have a fire pit with a friend or watch a movie with a friend or go to church with or do something with some friends, the thing we're most likely to do when we're not in a good place is, despite the fact that I need to hang out with you, I'm actually more likely to isolate myself and hang out in my room and stay away from everybody else. And not to rehash last week, but we said when people are not in a good place and they isolate themselves, they have a good reason for doing it. Because they probably don't have the energy to fake being okay. And if they don't have the energy to fake being okay, they're afraid that people might find out that they're not okay. And if people find out that they're not okay, they're terrified that they might be rejected. And so it makes total sense to isolate yourselves. And so last week was all about practical ways that we can help our friends when they're going through seasons of not being okay and they're isolating, how we can wisely help them. If you want any more of that, you got to look it up on YouTube. Okay, so today what we're going to do is we're going to land in a different place and think about us personally and where we're at in terms of the people that we have in our lives. All right, I'm going to say that every person in here, I think, falls in one of three categories. One is this, is that many of us are under-communitied. I know that's not a real word, but you got to work with me, okay? Under-communitied. What it means is we don't have the people in our lives that we actually need in our lives right now. This doesn't mean you don't have anybody in your life that cares for you, but what it basically means is this, is that when it comes down to having the circle of friends in your life that are going to help you, that are going to encourage you, that are going to pick you up, that when you have something heavy in life to carry, they're going to help you carry that weight and carry that burden. To have the kind of friends that will help maybe even point the things out in your life that are going to hurt you if you don't straighten them out. We need a small group of people in our lives. Everybody needs a team that can help them get through life. Nobody, I don't think, can do it by yourself, or even maybe with one other person. It takes a team. So some of you are under community, so that's you. Some of us need a different community because you're entering a different season of life than you were in when you developed your old community. So maybe the old community of friends you had, you developed in a season of life where maybe you were more selfish, or maybe you were less mature, or maybe you weren't even a follower of Jesus then, but now things have changed in your life. And if you want to mature into this new season of your life, and it's a new season of your life, it's going to be very difficult to do that if you're surrounded by a group of friends that are still stuck in the previous season of life, and so you need different community. Now, here's what I want you to think about. This is where you can think I'm wrong. My thought is this, is that if you are not under-community, which some of us are, and if you are not in need of different community, I think you do fall into the third category if you are a Christian. I don't know you might not be, and that's totally fine. This is a church where unchurched people and people that aren't Christians are welcomed. We love for you to be here. But if you're a follower of Jesus, I think that means you fall into the third category, which means it's your responsibility to build community so that when hurting people over the next year or over the next 10 years or however long God gives you to live, when hurting people are looking for friends when they need them, you have done the work so that the table is set and we can handle the weight of the hurting people that need community. So I just want you to take a guess, okay, on which one of these you belong to. And as we go through this morning, maybe you'll like narrow that down to really zone in on the one, but I think everybody belongs to one of those categories. Okay, we're going to read today Galatians 6. If you've got your Bibles, you can go there. I'm going to do a long setup on Galatians 6. This is for all the Bible nerds in the room. This is for anybody that thinks if you're interested in the Bible at all, I think this is going to help a lot. Galatians 6, we're going to read the first 10 verses of that, and we'll get there in a second. So Galatians is written probably like 15 to 25 years after the resurrection of Jesus. That is so wild. You may not be interested in that, but hear me out. That would be like today us standing here and me preaching this message about the resurrection of Jesus and it having happened in the year 2010. Now, like some of y'all teenagers, like 2010 is like, you're like, that's 15 years ago. For the rest of us adults in the room, it's like, that's like a year ago, okay? No, it's not. 2010 is like last month. So, I mean, it's like no time hardly at all between when the whole Jesus thing gets off the ground and this letter is written. This, again, Bible nerds, this or 1 Corinthians might be the earliest letters in the New Testament that are written like super close after the fact. Now, it's called Galatians because it's written to a region back in the day in a country that we call Turkey now. So you could imagine this would be like Paul writing a letter, and he would write the letter to the churches of the PD region. And we would call it like, what do you call people that live in the PD? I don't know, I've never heard that. Okay, whatever it is, PDers, okay? The letter of the PDers, okay? It would be in the Bible. And but it's not, it's the letter of the Galatians, and there's 10 major cities in this area, and the people in this area are going through a lot of turmoil. Now, this area in Turkey, when you think of Turkey, I think of Thanksgiving, okay? I don't know what you think of. When you think of the country Turkey, you probably think of a country where everybody's the same race, everybody's the same religion, it's somewhere over there toward the Middle East, whatever. That's actually not true. Even today in Turkey, there are lots of different ethnicities. There's lots of different skin shades. There's lots of different hair types. You'd be surprised. Turkey's a super interesting place. There's even still some different religions. Like Turkey's super interesting. When this was written, it was even more so true. Turkey was like the center of the world. It's one of the few countries in Europe and Asia. Okay, I know I'm being boring. Okay, so this letter's written there, and there's lots of tension. Here's why there's tension. Here's why there's pressure. Here's why they're so stressed out. For one reason, Paul had been in one of these cities called Lystra a few years before this, and the people had gotten so mad at him in Lystra that they actually beat him, and they thought they had murdered, the mob thought they had murdered Paul. Literally, they thought he was dead. They left him for dead. He wasn't. The dude, he made a comeback. There was lots of tension. Here's why there was so much tension. And some of y'all maybe can relate this to some other things in our lives. We don't have this exact problem. In the Roman Empire, everybody had to make offerings, incense offerings or something, to the emperor cult. The emperor, like Julius Caesar, to the emperor. You had to go in and make offerings. Everybody had to be a part of the emperor cult. Other than that, you could worship whatever gods you wanted to. Like you could worship your own local gods, you could do whatever, or no gods. But you had to go basically say, Caesar is Lord, okay? But there was one group of people that didn't have to do that, and only one. And it was the Jewish people. And so the Jewish people there was one group that had a carve out. They did not have to go to the emperor cult. Now, here's what the Romans thought. The Romans said this: we will let this one group off because they are so passionate, it's more trouble than it's worth to make them do it. But we're not going from 1 to 2 because if we start making exceptions, come on parents, this thing's never gonna end. Right? This thing's never going to end. So we can't make exceptions. Like this is the one exception. We're not going to do another one. This is it. Now, y'all answer the question if you know it. Most early Christians, before they were Christians, were part of what religion? Judaism, Jewish, whatever. Okay, use your word. They were Jews, right? So they came out of this, and these early Christians, many of whom to start with were Jewish. Jesus was Jewish at the very least, even though this was a multicultural church. They came out of this and they said, hey, Romans, we have a Jewish background, so we're going to claim the same exemption from paying the emperor tax, so to speak, that the Jewish people do. And then the Jewish people were like, y'all gonna get us all in trouble. What are you doing? This is not, like, we had a pretty sweet deal. Why you can't come in here and do this. So what happened, I promise I'm gonna read the Bible in a second. I just think this is interesting. So what happened was some of the early Christians, some of the early Jesus people that were Jewish started telling all the other Jesus people that weren't Jewish, hey, why don't y'all just act like you're Jewish and we can be Christians on the down low, okay? We can be, so you need to get circumcised like you're Jewish. You need to do all the hand washing rituals like you're Jewish. You need to cut out the barbecue, okay, even on Sundays, no Westwood, like you're Jewish. Okay, you need to do the whole thing like you're Jewish, which makes sense. It's like, why would we ask for all the trouble? Now, Paul writes this letter. If you want to get more out of the Bible, here's how you can get more out of the Bible. Every time you read letters like Galatians, Ephesians, Romans, Corinthians, 1st, 2nd Corinthians, all those, you can realize all these letters are written because there's a problem. Paul doesn't write any of these letters because he's got free time and he's just like gets bored and like, I wonder what they're doing in Galatia. You know, every one of these letters is written because somebody's being a knucklehead. Something's going wrong. And he's trying to address these problems. And so there's this tremendous tension between, they call them Judaizers, who are Christians, who are telling everybody, listen, if you just need to follow I know we live in a new age. Christians would say this. On Friday, when Jesus died, from that moment on, the world will never be the same. But we just need to follow the old rules to keep it simple. And so Paul told them this. You're going to love this. Teenagers, maybe if you know what this word means, you're going to love this. This is hilarious. You ready? Teenage boys especially. Okay. Paul said, listen, okay, y'all want to insist on everybody being circumcised. If you don't know what that means, you can look it up. Ask your parents. That'll be a fun car ride home. Okay. So the Jews have to be circumcised. And he's like, listen, guys. So in Jesus, people say, I don't have to follow the rules. I'm in Jesus. And so the Judaizers come along and say, I know in Jesus it's not about the rules anymore, but get circumcised. Well, just keep it simpler. Let's just adopt the old rules even though we live in the new age. So Paul says to them, you can look this up. Paul says to them, I've got a better idea. All of you that insist on getting circumcised. Why don't you not stop at circumcision? Why don't you just cut the whole thing off? That's in the Bible. Because Paul says this is a slippery slope. If we start going back to the old rules, even though we believe we live in the new age, we're going to lose it all. That's for us that grew up in a religious tradition that are holding on to the old rules. Anyway, you can apply that. Okay, let's go. You ready? Galatians chapter 6, verse 1. Brothers and sisters, he says that this church that's in all this tension, okay? There's so much tension in here. If someone is caught in a sin, you who live by the Spirit should restore that person gently. The word for caught here is not like, I got you, okay? It's not like that. It's like caught up in a net where you can't get out of it. It's like you get stuck. Every person in here has been caught in a sin. It's a lie that you told that led to another lie that you had to tell that led to another lie. It's addiction. Everybody in here has struggled with addiction. You're like, no, I haven't. I'm like, what about chocolate? Okay, what about Coke? I don't mean like cocaine. I mean like the drink. Could be, I mean like all that stuff, right? It could be anything. It could be like anything that you're addicted to. And you get caught in it, right? And the idea is you're caught. And has anybody ever got tangled up in a net before? Am I the only person here? Okay, good. Let's go. There's a few. The worse you fight, the worse it gets, right? Because you don't even, especially when you don't realize it, you just like wrap yourself all up. And so you need somebody with outside perspective to help you untangle the mess that you've got in. Now, when it comes to that, I don't want all y'all getting up in my business, helping me get out of my own stupid trap that I fell into. That would be a disaster if people that I know I have an acquaintance with that do that. But, everybody needs a few people that can say, listen, you might not realize it, but it looks like you're caught up in something that's going to cost you. I don't know if you have those people in your life. I don't know, and if you don't have those people in your life, can I tell you who you are? You're under-communitied. Because you need some of those people. You don't need busybody, nosy, gossipy people. I'm not saying that. But you need some friends that will say, listen, I don't know where this ends, but I don't think it's good for your marriage. Like you need friends who would say, I don't know where this ends, but if you got to drink every night, it might be a problem. Like you need those friends. And so say, this is what it looks like to be this new community. Here's probably reading between the lines what he's saying. Listen, if you've got some people who have acted out of fear and they've began keeping the old rules, that's missing the mark. That's what the word sin means. They're missing the mark for what they should be doing in this new age. But don't go beating them over the head. Your job as a friend is to restore them gently because this is complicated. And maybe if they are restored and maybe if they quit doing that, they still might lose their job, or they still might lose their house, or they still might lose their savings. And if they do, you should be the kind of community that makes sure their family is taken care of, because it's going to be complicated to get out of this thing. So you should be there to help them, because nobody sins because they want to destroy their family. Nobody does something stupid because they want to ruin their life. Our motives are complicated, and getting out of this stuff is complicated. So it says you need to be there to restore each other gently, but watch yourselves, or you may be tempted. Carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. I love this word because he uses the word law here. And so this is the concept. It's like, listen, the other people are saying, listen, use the old laws. Get circumcised, no pork, follow the rituals, just do the Jewish thing. Nothing, I'm not saying that's wrong, but if the motive to do that is to deny the Jesus thing, then it's a problem, is what he's saying. And so the old laws, Paul says, they are an issue. He said, but if you just really need a law, if you just really, really, really need a law, because sometimes we like laws, whether we admit it or not, because at least they're simple. He's like, if you really need a law, here is the law. Help each other when people have something so heavy that they're carrying that it doesn't look like they can make it on their own. And there's the law. That's a lot less satisfying in some ways than don't eat pork. Because don't eat pork is simple. I mean, it would be a big problem for me because I love barbecue. But or some other things. But it's in some ways it's much harder, right? Like, you want a law? Be the kind of person that has the kind of friend group so that when it all goes down, you'll be the one to help share the burden that they're carrying. There's a law for you, he says. And so that means, if Paul knows what he's talking about when he writes this letter, he says, if you want to fulfill the law of Christ, then you got to share each other's burdens. What that means is you cannot fulfill the law of Christ if you're by yourself. You can't do it solo. How many of y'all, anybody enjoy like the survivor shows where they go out in the woods and they survive on their own? Anybody? I love those. I love it. Where they take like a stick and a rock and they survive for 14 days in the Alaskan wilderness. And to me, that's just my favorite TV shows. And so sometimes I think we think that is what a mature Christian looks like. A mature Christian can go out in the wilderness and they can survive spiritually on their own. And if they have a rock and a stick, then they can make it through the hard times on their own. That is a terrible version of what it means to be a Christian. I'm not saying every once in a while you might be in a place where you've got to do something hard by yourself, but that should be the exception. There's nowhere in the Bible that you see a spiritual hero who is successful that does it by themselves. And if the law of Christ is for you to share one another's burdens, you can't one another anything by yourself. And so you've got to have a team. I'm telling you, some of you today's the day you need to start developing your new team. Because you're under community or you're in need of a different community. And some of you today you're in community, but you need to strengthen that community because there are more people over the course of the next year that are going to need community like you have to offer. So you better brace that thing up to be able to handle the weight of it. Everybody has work to do when it comes to community. Because the way we fulfill the law of Christ is in community, not by ourselves. Believe it or not, being a Christian is not your private spiritual exercise between you and God. There's part of it, how about this? This is maybe a better way to say it. It's personal, but it's not private. Christianity is a team sport if it's going to be done well. I don't like that because I'm an introvert. I'm like happiest, my family, if you're here, I love being with y'all. But I love being by myself too. Like I'm just wired that way. I'm just wired to love. But as much as I would like to think that Survivor Man is a model for Christianity, it's not. Okay. If you just don't believe that, okay, verse 3, if anyone thinks there's something, like you think you are man enough or woman enough to fulfill the law of Jesus by yourself, what arrogance. Like how arrogant can you be? It says, I'm speaking to myself, not just y'all. If anyone thinks there's something when they are not, they deceive themselves. For each one should test their own actions and then take pride in themselves alone without comparing themselves to someone else. Okay, remember I told you, if you want to open your eyes to the Bible in a brand new way, for those of you that read your Bible, you should read your Bible. Okay, if you want to read your Bible, they're actually on our bulletin, there's a Bible reading plan. It's in the gold right there in the middle. If you start that reading plan, you will read the whole New Testament this summer, June, July, and August. If you start that, you will read the whole New Testament. And so if you want to get the most out of that, here's what you can do. When you get to the letters that Paul wrote, Ephesians, Galatians, Romans, 1st, 2nd Corinthians, all that stuff, everything you read, everything that's in there, you can assume stems from a problem. So what does that mean? That means that the Galatian churches must have problems with comparison. Well, with these people, I'm like George Washington of Christianity. I'm storming the hill, crossing the Hudson. Who cares what the Romans do? And then these other people over here, they're just a bunch of cowards because they don't stand up for Jesus. Well, Paul's like, listen, you need to chill out, dude, because you don't have kids and they got a lot to think about. Like, they got a lot to think about. It's hard. Like, don't go comparing yourself to them, or don't go comparing yourself to this person because they give all that money. They think they're better than me, or they do this, or they don't serve as much as me. Or like, no. If you want to compare, you could compare yourself to Jesus. That's depressing, but you could do that if you want somebody else. If you really need, just like if you need a law, here's the law: carry each other's burdens. If you really need somebody to compare yourself to you of yesterday. That's a fair comparison. That's probably where you could land on that. Are you better than the you of yesterday? But other than that, quit with this comparison. So Bible readers, you can read these books. Everything you read in there, you can assume there was some knucklehead that caused Paul to say, oh yeah, I need to write about comparison for stupid Galatians. They just can't get over themselves. Okay. Verse 5. For each one of you should carry your own load. Nevertheless, I've never read this verse before since we started one church, but I'll read it because it's in here. Nevertheless, the one who receives instruction in the word should share all good things with their instructor. So this is where preachers talking about give money to the church. Here's the context. Here's what I would say. You should figure out what the most important things in your life are that produce the most fruits, and you should give to that, followers of Jesus. I can say that with so much confidence, okay? You should figure out what are the things that help, that encourage, that grow the good things in my life, in my family's life, in my community's life, in the world. What are the things that produce good fruit that multiplies, right? That great things come out of it, and you should give financially to that. I can say that because I'm not saying anything about one church. You should find those things, and Christians, you should give like crazy. Like, you should become a generous person. You can be randomly generous, but don't just be randomly generous and think that makes you a generous person. Generous people usually have a plan. And they find the things that are the most valuable and the most important, and they give to those. So at the least you can take that. Verse 7, don't be deceived. All right, I'm gonna change some stuff here. This was an agricultural community. They knew all about farming, right? We don't do a whole lot of farming. Maybe some of you farm. We're way more familiar, instead of sowing and reaping, with the idea of investing and then getting a payday one day, right? Investment. Not all of us are investors, but I think we all get the concept of investing. So the words, the original words were not in English, but the original words have been translated to English. You can read the original words. I'm going to give you the Jimmy version where I replace sow with invest, okay? Just to help us. All right, here's what Paul says. He says, let's see, do not be deceived, verse 7. God cannot be mocked. Every man, every woman will make a withdrawal one day from the things that they've invested into. Whoever invests to please your impulses, to please the things that you want for you right now, whoever invests to please those things will reap destruction. But whoever invests to please the Spirit, from the Spirit will get paid a dividend that will outlast your life, that will go beyond anything you can possibly understand. So don't let us become weary in doing good. Okay, so I want you to imagine that Jesus rose from the dead in the year 2010. That means that would have happened at the very least at some point since the inception of One Church. We would have had a guest speaker come in who would have said, guys, I saw him. Okay, I saw him. I'm telling you, we would have had a guest speaker. We would have. And these churches all had heard from at least somebody who had seen the risen Jesus themselves. That's just the way it worked. These people went around telling these stories. It was so powerful. So we would think if Jesus rose from the dead 2,000 years ago, roughly now. But if he had rose from the dead 15 years ago, I mean, how on fire would we be, right? We'd be on fire. We'd be unstoppable. We'd never quit. We'd never run out of energy. The only problem is, the only reason Paul would add a sentence that says, don't be weary, is because the Christians that were living 15 years after the resurrection were already wearing out. Right? Just a little logic. They're already wearing out. Now there's lots, we could do a series on this. We may do a series on this. Can I tell you one way I can guarantee you that you will run out of spiritual energy? Is to do your faith by yourself. I'm just telling you. I'm not saying that's the only element. There's lots of ways to be wise about this. We don't want to run out of energy. But again, your spiritual journey with God is personal, but I think we make a mistake when we think that is the same thing as being private. I think it's something that we're meant to do in teams. And I'm not asking you to raise your hand, but I bet a lot of us have been through highs and lows, like extreme highs and lows with our spiritual journey. I'm not blaming you at all. But I'm just telling you, if you don't do the Jesus thing in community, you're going to run out of steam fast, and you're going to hit the downswing on that roller coaster sooner rather than later, and you're going to wonder, what happened? And in some ways, nobody's good enough to do this by themselves. So he says, don't be weary in doing good. For the proper time, we'll all experience the pay that comes from making the right investment. How about that? The pay that comes from making the right investment if we don't give up. Therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all people, especially to those who belong to the family of believers. Okay, y'all know who Charles Manson is, right? Bet you didn't see that coming. Okay, Charles Manson, so he was a serial killer, crazy guy. And anybody know what they called his group? The Family. That's one of the names. They called it the Family. Now, Christians were known by a lot of different names. And did you know the term Christian is actually like making fun of people. It's like, you little Christian. And did you know, this is cool. I didn't say this the first service, but did you know that they found early graffiti that proves the Christian movement was spread throughout Turkey like super fast after the resurrection? It's so interesting. Here's what the graffiti was. It was a man on a cross, but the man on the cross had a donkey head, and I forget let's say it was Theophilus, and it said, and it had a guy bowing down, and it said, Theophilus worships his God, making fun of a person that would worship someone who was crucified. So interesting. So anyway, okay, so family, okay. Here we go. So one of the names that they called the early Christian movement was they actually called them the family. That's really not everywhere, but that was some of the names somewhere. Okay, I grew up in church. And one thing that happened to me along the way is I said, I grew up in church, so it's easy for me to think the weird things that church people do are normal. And if you grew up in church, this is something that you will fall a victim of. So at some point, I said, I actually want to open my eyes and see how weird we are, okay? See the things that are strange. Can I tell you one of the strange things that Christians do sometimes is people that aren't related call themselves brothers and sisters. That's weird. Like you don't say, well, that's not weird. It's not weird for you because you grew up with it. You walk into a religious room, and like people are like, what's up, brother? And like, well, you're white and you're black. Is that like I don't understand. Are y'all really related? Like everybody's brother and sister? Is this a family church? And you don't, it like seems like a cult, right? It seems like really strange. Did you know the reason that started was that they said we can't come up with any better analogy for how tight-knit our group is meant to be than to consider it a family. And so we're going to call each other brother and sister because that's the best analogy for what we have. Interesting Bible fact. One of the reasons that the early church was persecuted, there was a rumor going around about the early church. And the rumor was this. This is also on the wild side of the Bible. They said Christianity is an incest cult. Here's why they said it was an incest cult. He said, all we do is hear these people call each other brother and sister and talk about greeting each other with a holy kiss. What kind of freaky people are these? It's like, what in the world is going on with these Christians? And then, the other one, they were also accused of being cannibals. You might want to guess? Yeah, because they would do this meal sometime called the Lord's Supper, and it says they would partake in the body of Christ, and they would drink the wine that represented the blood and the bread that represented the body, and this got very complicated very fast because it was new, and these people were so passionate. When you think it was a cult, and so it's understandable. And so family, they get called family. Okay, so here's the takeaway. You cannot do Christianity very well for very long unless you have something that looks like a family around you. Now, you say, well, man, I can't imagine that. I don't mean perfect. I mean, anybody in here have a perfect family? Perfect. You got nobody. Okay, good. So that's how this family is going to be too. Imperfect. But nobody can do Christianity for very long, very well, unless you're surrounded by a family. Now, I'm going to do this like rapid fire. You ready? This is for anybody that wants to take action on this. Because you are either under-communitied, needing different community, or if neither one of those things is true, you have a responsibility to build community so that as the hurting people come in that need community, we can handle the weight of that. You can handle the weight of that. Because I'm not going to be in everybody's family. I mean, we should have you can be family, extended family with several hundred people, but what happens is you find a few people. I'm going to give you 3 steps to find a few people. Everybody needs a few people that you can share one another's burdens, that you can do these things with. You ready? Okay, number 1, here we go, fast. Consistency in attendance and location. I never talk about church attendance because not growing up, not in the church I was, but in many churches that I was familiar with, you got the impression that the number 1 variable that says how good of a Christian you are, how much God approves of your faith, is how often you attended church. That's not true. You can attend church every Sunday, beat your wife, be selfish, be prideful, be arrogant. In fact, in some ways, your perfect attendance can contribute to the problem because you become more arrogant. But hear me out. Just imagine if you want to build community that you pick the same service. So you can pick 11 o'clock, 9:30, whatever. If you're a part of one church. If you're a part of another church, fine, go. Okay, but if you're a part of one church, what if you pick the same service and you said, I'm going to attend as often as I can, and when I come, I'm going to sit in the same area as I can, not necessarily the same seat. This is not the Baptist church where you get mad if somebody sits on your pew, okay? But I'm going to sit in the same area as much as I can, and then when I do that, I'm actually going to make eye contact and smile with the people around me and maybe even share my name with them. If things get wild, okay, if you're under 20 years old, you can share that snap, okay? Or if you're over 20, you can exchange phone numbers, you know? And if things get really crazy, you could do that. And then what if you do that over time, you'll start to build some community. So you're saying those people will be my best bros. Well, not right away, you know, but it's a step toward building a team. And you can do that. Number two, you can sign up for a group or team. I'm not trying to trick you into anything, but groups are sort of slow right now because it's summer. But teams, there's no better way to make friends than to play softball together, or to play volleyball together, or to build a wheelchair ramp together, or to greet people together, or to do something important together. Just a great way to do it. I know many people in this room that would say this church is like my family. And when they say this church is like my family, they don't mean all of y'all. They probably don't even mean me. They mean 5 or 6 people on the team they're a part of, that they're like family with. And like you can do that. You can sign up today. On your bulletin, you can sign up today, or you can stop by the Connect area. Told you I'm going fast. Number 3, this is getting wild. Y'all ready? Getting wild. Some of you may need to like cover your eyes, close your ears. This is way too stressful. You could ask somebody out for coffee or a meal. Now don't be like don't be too rehearsed. Don't be like, I would like to make a request for a coffee, engagement on Tuesday. No, but couldn't you say we should meet up for coffee sometime? Maybe we should, look, we're going, hey, who's eating lunch today? Raise your hand if you're eating lunch. Raise your hand if you're, stick your hand. Are you eating lunch? Don't lie. Raise your hand if you're eating lunch out. You don't know yet? Okay, you're eating. Like, if you're eating lunch out, how hard would it be to say in a few weeks from now to the people that you've been smiling at and that you've exchanged, how hard would it be to say, we're going to Rancho, but there's no longer a Rancho, it's really Casa, okay? And that's for y'all old-time Hartsville people, all right? So, couldn't you say we're going out to eat? How hard is that? We're going to get some lunch. Nobody gets mad being invited to eat Mexican food. That's impossible, okay? It's against the laws of human nature to get mad when you're being invited to go eat chips and salsa. Couldn't you do that? You could do that. And so here's all I want to leave at this. I know that's super practical maybe and boring for some of y'all. But guys, I want to say every person, under community people and different community people, it is time to start building your team today. I'm not preaching about this next week. It might be 3 years before we talk about this again. So you don't wait on the next message. Don't wait on the next moment to feel like a little push. It's time today. And every one of you can do at least one of these today. Some of y'all are overachievers. I can tell looking at you. And you could do all 3 of these within the next week. Like by next Sunday afternoon, you could be like, check, 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 done. And you feel great about yourself. But every person in here can do one of these. Now, for those of you, I've got great community. I've got great people. I can sit on my hands because I'm good. The problem is this. There are 30,000 unchurched people in the greater Hartsville area. And I sure hope we connect with a lot of them and help them. And if you want to help them, wouldn't it be a shame for them to come in and there's no more room at any of our tables? Because we haven't done the work to expand our tables and make room for hurting people? Christians, it's your job. If you are in a good place with community, it is my responsibility and it is your responsibility to build community. And you can do it. And that's my sign. We're out of time. Okay, here we go. Let's pray and we'll go. All right. Father, thank you for this morning. Thank you for the fact that Christianity is not a spiritual exercise that we do alone in our room. I mean, we can be alone with you in our room and we can be alone with you anywhere. That's important. But thank you so much that Christianity is a team sport. It's a team sport. And I pray that you would just light a fire under every single one of us that needs to build our new team today and help us to put in the work, not thinking that we're going to walk into a room someday and accidentally become best friends with our new team, but you called us to put the work in to build that team. Help us to do that. For every person in here that's in a good place, help us to realize it's not just about us, that it's our responsibility to build community for the people that are going to need it. So we got to brace this thing up so they can handle the weight of hurting people over the next year. Please help us to do that. Pray in Jesus' name, amen. Don't go, freeze. All right, I got something for you. You ready? All right, speaking of community, on July 6th, we are not having Sunday morning services. We're going to do cookouts all over town. And here's what's going to happen. You're going to find out that there are people in your neighborhood that go to one church and you didn't even know it. And it's going to be so cool and it's going to be a great surprise. Okay, but here's what we need. How many of y'all have filled out a survey about what part of town you live in? Raise your hand. All of you with your hands down. Get your phone out. All right, I want you to text my crib to 97,000. And all you're going to do is tell us what neighborhood you live in, and we're going to hook you up. Like, you're going to get to go have a barbecue on July 6th. We're helping you. I mean, we're setting this thing up on a silver platter. Then we're going to let you know where the closest cookout to you is. We're going to have like 10 of these things, 12 of them on July 6th. And you can go be a part of that cookout and meet some new friends, make some new connections. For all of you that are under community, different community, build community, like do this real quick. Last thing. Don't forget, there's lots of info on the bulletin, Bible reading plan. There's a game night this week. If you like playing fun games, you can meet at the Connect building and make new friends. It's in your bulletin. You can look it up. See you next week, guys. We'll do it again. Have a good Sunday.